and I could see Gerard and Ray. They were like glancing at each other and like staring, passing looks, being like, "What the fuck? What is Cheese doing?"
Welcome, everyone, to This Was the Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. John Cheese was a member of the NJ punk scene back in the late 90s, and I was connected to him by Anthony Annoyance. If you remember that I did an interview with Anthony Annoyance about Annoyance Zine, and Anthony was like, you got to interview this guy, John, because he used to go to a lot of shows, and he's just got some really good stories. But the interesting thing out of all of those things, which are still interesting, was that he was a roadie for a shit ton of bands. And so he emailed me and kind of gave me a list of all this, but this is what he said in the email. He said, I toured from 2002 to 2012, working for all kinds of bands as a tour manager / merch guy. Piebald, Cave-In, My Chemical Romance, Apollo Sunshine, Limbeck, The Honorary Title, Megan Dia, Big D and the Kids Table, Streetlight Manifesto, The National. I did a weird T-Pain tour and every Warped Tour from 2002 to 2011. And he also noted that from 2002 to 2003, he was with Doghouse Records, I think just selling merch at their table. And then 04 to 11, he was with Side One Dummy Records. Now, another fun fact is that Pelak, who I also did an interview with, and again, I don't remember which fucking episode it was, but it was season 1. And once he saw that John was going to be on the show, he sent me a text and said, I love that you have on John Cheese. He used to sell the Warped Tour comp on Warped Tour for us when I worked at Side One Dummy. I used to fly out to the tour on different dates to pick up backpacks full of cash from him. That sounds kind of fucking great. So I ended up finding a day to get John on the phone, and we had never met, and it was like we had known each other forever. And this is what we talk about. Why it's okay to not like some of the older punk bands, the origins of the name John Cheese, possibly running Cave-In's merch, finally remembering the name Aaron Kraft from many episodes ago. This will make sense when I'm talking about it. My arch nemesis from high school. This was fucking so random, and it's hilarious that I got to bring this up on this fucking podcast. The Morris County Youth Crew, meeting Piebald, the My Chemical Romance story, which is fucking incredible. Jesse from Motion City Soundtrack's involvement in John's marriage, selling real estate to Fat Mike and other punk rock folks, and a ton more. Make sure you go to thiswasthescene.com to check out the merch that's there. All proceeds go to help keep this thing alive. It helps to pay for the space that I utilize to host the podcast, which distributes it to all the channels, which is the place that you're listening to now. That's a bunch of technical stuff. You can also donate or become a Patreon. Patreon, you can literally pay $1 a month. And that just helps accumulate and, again, pay for all the bills of this stuff. You can see all those things, the buttons at the top of my website at thiswasthescene.com. Okay, so this is going to be something new I'm going to try. I tried the email thing. It doesn't really seem like anyone really give a shit. So I've like sending emails once a week. But let's try this. Send an email to thiswasthescene@gmail.com and let me know what your favorite song was from back then, by which band, and I will mention it on the podcast. I'll give you a shout out. So I'll say your name and what the song was, and it just kind of helps any listeners just go, oh shit, I should go listen to that song. And that's it. It's like I could say Brian Stevens from Nutley, New Jersey recommended Johnny Quest by Less Than Jake. This was his favorite song. And give me like a little snippet, like this is why I love this song or it makes me remember this. And so hopefully what that'll do is when people are driving, once they're done listening to the podcast, they'll go, oh shit, I'll go listen to that song. And it just like throw people back in time, go on Spotify, go on YouTube, listen to that song, and unlock some memories and be happy. So yeah, that's the new idea. So again, email thiswasthescene@gmail.com and let me know what that song is, who that band was, and why you love that song. And I'll give you a shout out. Okay. Feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. Now I gotcha.
I just told my wife I didn't do any preparation mentally at all, which I thought would probably be best. I didn't really give it a lot of thought because if I gave it a lot of thought, I felt like, I don't know. So I just didn't think about it. I was just like, 1 o'clock, I'm going to talk to this dude.
Yeah, I had a couple, I think majority of people I talked to, they're like, I had to call old friends and and ask them questions. I'm like, man, like I don't even prep for this. I have a set amount of questions, and I literally, if I'm gonna talk to somebody, um, let's say like someone in a band, or lately it's been record labels and things like that, I'll open up Wikipedia probably 20 minutes before I talk to them and just kind of scan the internet and just go into it. Like I don't really prepare for this ever
Mm, that's good.
because I'm professional.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, have you heard any of the podcasts?
Yeah, I listened to. So I first heard of you through
All of
Brian,
them. Just kidding.
through every single one.
Everyone.
Uh, Brian Malloy was an old buddy of mine,
Oh,
and
nice.
hosted something, and I listened to his podcast. I mean, I knew him 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I listened to it then, and then I was like, "Oh, this is awesome!" And then I listened. I
Justin
feel like
Anthony's.
somebody. What's that?
Justin Anthony annoyances.
I did. I listened to that one also, and then I listened to you did with Benny, right, from
Yeah.
Manville or Gaslight.
Yeah. I love it. It's like it's way cooler when you're like Vanville Elks Lodge and people are like, "What's that?" And then everyone's like, "You say Gaslight," they're like, "Oh shit." It's like that's the easy go-to, but it's like for us, it's oh yeah, it's Anthony Annoyance, it's Benny from Manville. Or
Yeah,
Benny from
exactly. So I listened to that one, and that one got me really pumped because that really that one more than Malloy's and more than Anthony Annoyance. That one I felt like I was there. I was like, oh yeah, I remember this, I remember that. I actually randomly just ran into what's the sound guys? I don't know why, but I never remember his name. The main sound guy's name that Benny took over at Manville.
It wasn't Heath Miller, right?
No, big time. He's like a big time sound guy, and I never remember his name.
Oh,
He's like,
I think Ricky talked about him in his.
oh
I
yeah, I listened to that guy also, but I don't know Ricky at all.
Okay.
But I listened to that one too, and then I don't know, there was a few others that I was gonna listen to, and but there's it's like if you like a band, you're gonna listen to the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I do the same thing. Like there's certain podcasts where I mean, I'll listen to a couple episodes and I'll scan through it. Like, because I'll interview people and sometimes people are like, who is that? But I'm like, no, it's really good. It's a good interview. But I do the same thing where I'm like, if it's Joe Rogan or some shit like that, I'll scan through it. I'm like, I don't know any of these people. But then if I do take it, if I just gamble and just listen to it, I'm like, fuck, that's a good one.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. See, I don't do. I've never done that because there are Joe Rogan. I mean, you just brought him up, for example. I love the political ones, but the ones where it's like he's talking to MMA fighters, and I was like, I don't care about this at all.
Yeah, because I'm not into the MMA, so I don't really. But then I learned something about it, which makes me interested into checking it out because I like people who are very fascinated about one specific world. Where I think nowadays I'm trying to think that, or I'm looking at my own life and going, I am too spread out. Where I almost respect people who are, like Joe Rogan. He's comedy and he's the podcast, but his main theme is like comedy and then MMA, like health, right? He's very focused. He like lives in that world and just kind of broadens it from there. And then, there's people who are really into comic books, and I almost respect that they just want to do comic book things because it just makes it very like a lot less complicated.
Yeah. No, totally. I mean, yeah, because you're focused on that one energy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
like, man, I'm thinking about, I'm like, I don't have anything like that I geek out on, which I mean, this is my one thing that I'm focused on, but then I just do too much crap. But
In the yesteryear or whatever, it was having a hobby. You
yeah,
focus on that thing. That's what it was. The one Joe Rogan podcast that I listened to that I really like, it was like, man, I got to go vegetarian again. But of course I didn't. Was I listened to the John Joseph one from Cro-Mags.
oh, okay.
And that was just like, this dude is I mean, I'm not a Cro-Mags, not that I'm not a Cro-Mags fan, but I don't know the Cro-Mags. I know who they are. I know that they're an old hardcore New York hardcore band, but I don't really know, like I never listened to them.
But it's from like an era that you appreciated.
It's from an era I appreciated, yeah, for sure. And it's also like a band that I know that I'm supposed to have listened to, but I just didn't.
I hate that. Like there's a couple, and we're gonna get into this sooner or later. Whatever, we're already in it. There's like a lot of bands that I think it was Ricky's interview where he brought up I think he brought up Screeching Weasel or there was some pop punk band from back in the day. I'm like, or I think it was even the Descendants. I even mentioned like a bunch of times, like everyone keeps bringing up the Descendants. Like I never really listened to the Descendants. Like,
Yeah.
And even after now doing all these interviews, I've gone back and I've gone to their really early stuff in the '90s and listened to it. I'm like, I don't really
get into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not, I listen to the bands that I listen to, and even if it was like a popular band, or not popular, if it was a known band and I was supposed to listen to them, I was supposed to know about them, but I didn't, I don't hold any, I'm not ashamed that I never listened. I never saw the movie The Godfather, and people are like, what? And I was like, I never saw it. What do you want me to do?
Yeah. It was okay.
I never got into, I never really got into like Youth of Today or like, Gorilla Biscuits I liked a lot, but like there was bands that, or who did I just mention? The Cro-Mags, or like, Sick and All, or like there's these bands where they're like, oh, how did you not get into those bands? I was like, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I just, at that time, I never bought the record, and then.
But it is cool though to listen to them talk, because they're talking about that time period, and it almost makes you want to go and listen to them.
Sure, but then you listen.
Yeah, then you listen to it, and you're like, okay.
Yeah. I think I missed the boat on this one.
I will say though, I will say there is a documentary. I think it's Noisy does it. They've done a lot of docs on YouTube. It's the band. Fuck, they were a hardcore band. Sarge? No, shit.
Shift?
Not Shift. They were on Victory. They were like this big band, and all of a sudden they just stopped because the singer just like went MIA, and they played a reunion show years, like I think it was recently, but it was this, God damn it. Fuck, it's one word. I'm gonna have to edit this part. Fuck.
That's okay.
But it's like, but I never listened to them back then, and their documentary was so fucking good. I was like, Jesus Christ, this is amazing. Even though I don't know what they sound like.
The thing, even because it was the same world or scene or whatever, like you didn't have to listen to that band to not respect, to appreciate.
Yeah.
You didn't have to listen to that band to appreciate the story that they're telling in a documentary, or to understand that time,
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
But it's like you remember them, what they're talking about though. You can see where you were at the time. You're thinking like,
exactly.
God, this is gonna fucking kill me though. But Judge, that's it, Judge.
Oh, sure, yeah, Mike Judge.
Yeah, no, wait, seriously, that was his name? Fucking Beavis and Butthead? Okay, Mike Ferrero, not to be confused with filmmaker Mike Judge, former. Okay, interesting. Okay, well,
his name Mike, but they called him Mike Judge.
Yeah, I mean that's like us saying like Anthony Annoyance, and then Brian. Well, even now, when I talk to people, I would be like, how do I say your last name? I've never known anybody by their last name, like ever. So actually, that's a good segue, because John here is known as John Cheese. And do people still call you
that? Yes.
Like newer friends, or just all?
Well, my Facebook name is still John Cheese. So if I meet somebody new, I mean, yeah, short answer is yes. New people still call me John Cheese. But
how'd you get that?
As a real estate agent, I don't saying, hey, I'm John Cheese, so it's like, I also legally changed my last name when I got married, which is a whole nother story. My name was Jonathan Kestenbaum, but when I got married, my wife and I, when we had our first kid, we both changed our names to McKeston. So her last name was McAvoy, my last name is Kestenbaum. We kind of combined our names to make McKeston.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's not traditional, but it's pretty awesome.
That's really cool. How long have you guys known each other?
We met in December of 2009, and then we got married in 2012. So we've been married. We just had our 7-year wedding anniversary.
Nice. Congrats, man.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Crazy. Combine their names. There's always some little new thing I learned that's like outside of the punk rock realm where I'm talking to someone like, that's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah.
And ballsy.
So anyway, John Cheese, honestly, I got the nickname in 1991 when I was a freshman in high school, 92, when it's a weird reason to get a nickname, a lifelong nickname. Like I'm 41 years old and it's like a lifelong nickname.
Yeah.
But new kid in school and nobody knew me, and I was playing football in gym class, and somebody threw me the ball and I caught the ball in the end zone, and everybody was all excited, but it was like a cheesy, quote unquote, a cheesy catch. And then later on in the day, some kid was like, "Hey, you're that guy. I don't remember your name, but you had that cheesy catch." And you're like, "You're such a cheese ball." Cheese, cheese, cheese. And then I was just cheese or cheeser or cheesy for like years. And then my friend Jeremy knew people that call me John and knew people that call me Cheese, but didn't really know what to call me. So he just started calling me John Cheese.
So would people always call you that, like your full name like that? Like, oh, it's John Cheese. Hey, John Cheese. Or they'd be like, hey, John.
No, it's either John or John Cheese or Cheese.
It's almost like, it's like Monkey. Did you know Monkey?
No.
Big Wigs Roadie?
No, I don't know that guy at all. I feel like he sounds familiar, but I don't.
Yeah, he used to roadie for Big Wig and like a bunch of people, but everyone calls him Monkey. His name is Mike. For years I didn't know his name was Mike at all, like Cipriano. Like, what the fuck?
There's a ton of touring dudes who have like, there's a guy named Bagel and a guy named Baloney. And I mean, this is like legit, like, and then, there's just like a ton of others. Soup, Bobby Soup is a big one. There's a ton of people who, have food nicknames.
It's too funny, dude. So I'm gonna kind of dive into this. So what happened was Anthony Annoyance hits me up and he's like, "Hey, dude, I should introduce you to John Cheese. He like toured all these bands, and he's like, the one thing that stood out to me, and I think first said he's like he was the merch guy for Piebald. I was like, oh hell yeah. And so then John emails me. He's like, hey Anthony, so we should connect. And he's like, here's like my background and stuff like that. He's like, I think this is already lame that I'm doing this, but whatever. Then he's like talking about him going to shows and stuff. So John's like, he's been basically the merch guy was like your gig and tour manager for bands like Piebald, Cave In, My Chemical Romance, Limbeck, Megan Dia, Big D and the Kids Table, Streetlight Manifesto, The National. The National, that's crazy, dude.
These are all true, except some of them are like, I have to like put in little asterisks next to them. Okay. For Cave In, I don't know why I throw them in there because I never really toured with them. I just think it's cool to say I toured with Cave In, but I did a Piebald Cave In tour and I sold merch for both bands on the entire tour. So
I think that counts.
Cave In, totally bullshit, but that's what happened. So
I think that totally counts. I mean, you sold merch, you sold it for Cave In, so you were Caveman's merch guy for a tour. It's true.
Yeah.
Which album did you actually? I got into Cave In. I saw the Actuality of Thought VHS doc, whatever they did. I've mentioned this a bunch of times, and there's a couple bands on here that I've interviewed that have been in it, but Cave In I've never interviewed. But I saw them, and they played at the skate park that my old band played at, and then I heard them, I was like, oh, I really like this. And then I got into their albums where they were just they transformed like super screamo. They got rid of like their singer at the time, and then what's his face took over.
Jupiter was one of their records that I don't know them that well, to be honest. Every time I was really stoked on them, but I don't know Cave In that well, to be honest.
Antenna is really good, even though some people might, because that's when they stopped being so heavy. But I was like, when I saw that, I was like, oh my god. But the Piebald. So I really want to talk to you again, like kind of like get your perspective as a merch guy, like a guy who grew up. You said you got into shows in the '94, and then you stayed within this scene until 2012 when you stopped being a merch guy, tour manager. And
different worlds for me though, and I can explain to you if you want. Like I'll let you, obviously run the ship, but it was two different worlds: going to shows and like being involved in like the hardcore scene in New Jersey, and going to see like Lifetime and Floor Punch and Mouthpiece and all that stuff. And like my friends all made zines, and I still have like all these hundreds and hundreds of zines from like the 90s, even if it was like one zine that some kid in Pennsylvania made or wherever. Like I still have these things for no reason. But that was like a world, and then there was my touring world, which were two different.
Oh, totally.
They didn't really. I don't know if one had to do with the other, but.
Well, I think that it's cool to get that perspective, because this whole podcast is based on there's this entity, which was the scene, the punk scene, hardcore scene, emo scene, whatever, ska scene. It's all one thing. And it was a bunch of kids going to hall shows which led to going to New York City and things like that. And then it expanded where people were in bands and they started touring. So it took us out of this bubble of New Jersey and expanded. But I like getting people's perspective from the outside looking in at that whole time period. And this is cool because you were someone who went to a lot of hardcore shows, which I haven't really talked about a lot in this because there was that whole hardcore scene that was mixed in, but it was a little bit different.
Yeah. So I remember very, very vividly there being like a pop punk scene in New Jersey that I actually didn't really know much about, but I knew it was like this second scene that was like thriving at the same time as like the hardcore scene was. And it was really interesting because I remember going to a show at a high school, and I know that the one band that I remember playing was Mohawk Barbie, and I'm sure you remember them.
Yeah, I interviewed Trucker.
So I never got into that scene, but I was so fascinated by it.
See, like that's funny because when I was part of the pop punk scene, and when I heard about the hardcore scene, the reason I did is because, and you mentioned one of these bands in your email, was Mike Ziobro, who was in Uprise.
Yeah, totally.
And we went to high school together in Jefferson. So you went to high school in Rockaway, you said, right?
Yeah, I went to Morris Knowles, but I used to hang out in Jefferson all the time. My friend Aaron Kraft. Did you know Aaron Kraft?
Yeah, I knew Aaron. Aaron was like a year older than me.
Okay, so Aaron Kraft and he was one of my closest friends. That's crazy. And he had his sister, and Ziobro had a Jen Ziobro also.
Yep. Yeah, actually, it was super funny. Man, I think it was like 10 episodes ago. I was trying to think of Aaron's last name, and I couldn't figure it out. And and I think I brought it up again in another interview. I couldn't figure it out, but I fucking finally figured it out. Because I was talking about him because I remember him in high school. It was like him and Ziobro and Ari Kalish. Who else was it? There was like this little group of just like punk rock kids and then Aaron worked at Hot Topic.
Yep, he worked at Hot Topic with a guy named Jeremy Alasaskis, and there was a handful of other guys. There was a kid named Corey that worked there. But there was also in Jefferson, there was Mookie. Did you know Mookie? Matt Bailey?
Matt Bailey. That's a fucking name. I hated that fucking kid. Here's a story why. So I was a freshman. I just joined high school as a freshman. And it was week 2, so I literally got off the bus. I'm walking down the hall to go to the next hall to like my locker. I like scratched my head or like moved my hair back and my elbow was up, so I elbowed that kid by accident. Fucking guy turns around and gives me this look of death, and I was like, hey dude, sorry. The entire school year, he terrorized me.
Wow.
He was such a piece of shit to me.
Wow.
And then he stopped the next year, and this is actually true. So... And if you're friends, I'm sure he's a nice guy. I'm sure now if I met him, I'm sure he'd be a nice person. But like back then, I fucking hated him.
Totally lost track. I haven't talked to the kid or had any knowledge of what he's been up to in probably 20 years. So
okay. Wait, I gotta finish the story. So he literally like ruined my like freshman year. I was like afraid of him because he was like his crew of guys. Like they would just like pick on me and stuff. So my sister, she was his like some like representative of him when he was going from 8th grade to high school, and she was his like PDP or something. And she saw him in the mall that summer, and he was like, oh, hey, what's going on? She's like, hey, I hear you've been fucking with my brother. She's like, you do it again, I'm going to fucking kill you. And then his senior year, he like never talked to me again. So I was like, I just had to tell that story because I was like, man. But what was he like as an individual? I'm sure outside of being a total douche, he might have been nice.
All I remember about him is he had his own apartment, his own house in New Jersey while he was in high school. Like it wasn't his house. It was like on his parents' property, but it was like his own house. It was like a 1-bedroom house on his parents' property that he lived in, and we used to always just hang out there. I have like these old like Super 8 or High 8 or Super 8, whatever they are, like these old tapes of us hanging out at his house, just like watching skate videos and stuff like that.
That's too funny. Was it Mike Graham, his friend too?
What's that?
Mike, we're not going to stick on this, but like, did you remember Mike Graham? He was part of that whole crew.
Yeah, Mike Graham. And then there was also these 2 other kids, and I don't know if they went to Jefferson or not, but they were in that crew also. And I don't even know what their names are, but they were brothers, Bonesy and Robbie.
Maybe.
Is that No, okay.
Yeah.
There was the whole Jefferson there was a ton of kids from Jefferson. And I don't know, you can edit this out or whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter, but
Nah,
I don't think. All right.
Wait, so like what I usually go back to get like ask people what got into music, but I think like what I want to do with this interview is really start from what got you into the scene and then go through going to hardcore shows, what you saw, and then how that transition to doing merch and like what was like being on tour. Let's go back to what actually got you involved. Like what point in your life did you go to your first show?
I went to my first show. My first show was Weston and Plow and a band called Hodgepodge, which was this kid named Mike Kazantis' band. It might have been called Patchwork. It was either Patchwork or Hodgepodge, one or the other. Anyway, it was probably sometime in late '94. It was probably a senior in high school, and it was in Wharton, Knights of Columbus Hall, I believe.
Yeah, but it was a really small place.
And I remember that my parents were stressed out about, they wanted to know if there was going to be alcohol there, and they just didn't know what it was, and I didn't know either. But
wait, real quick though, so there's a flyer. There's a thing called NJPP Archives. This guy Joe Polito runs it. So he has flyers in categories like 94, 95, and up to like 90 or 2000, whatever. The flyer's here. It's Wharton American Legion, Friday, March 24th, 6 p.m. Call Jay for info, and it's Daly, Plow, Weston, True Zero, and Patchwork.
100%. That's it. I think I have that flyer. I'm pretty sure I still have that flyer because you just named those bands, and I was like, because I have all my old flyers.
Yeah, I'll send it to you right now. Actually, email it to you.
Yeah. So that sounds correct.
It is.
Couple other shows, and then my buddy Rob Sheffield, he was in a band with Malloy. He was in a band called All Things Considered. He was in a band called Stomp Crew, and then he played drums in 97A for a spell. He's my best friend. My family just went to visit his family, and super great guy. He's like like an international lawyer. He's like what's it called when you're a partner? He's a partner at a law firm in Kansas City now, but he was an old hardcore kid.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and he's great. He's just one of those lifelong friends that I'll have forever.
How did you guys go to that show? Like, what brought it to your attention? Were you listening to bands like punk bands prior to this?
No. Prior to this, I was listening to like Smashing Pumpkins and REM and Green Day and Operation Ivy. So I guess, but I don't really remember. I mean, I also listened to like Beck. Yep. And I'm thinking about what cassettes that I had. And I listened to Edie Brickell. I had a John Lennon tape. I had I'm just thinking about different tapes. I had Suzanne Vega. I was all over the map.
But like what transitioned you, like what, someone just like, hey man, we're just going to this thing. Because Wharton's right next to Rockaway.
Yeah. So this kid, Mike Kazantis, had a show. His band, he had a band. And I was friends with him. The Sheffield brothers were friends with the Kazantis brothers, and Mike Kazantis was the older brother, and Jim Kazantis was the younger brother. Mike Kazantis was in a band, and I think that might have been where it first started.
Okay.
But also, Dave Ackerman, who was in Dead Nation and Tear It Up. Dave Ackerman went to our high school and was the same year as Rob. And we all went to shows, and he might have known because he had an older brother also. When I said I didn't prepare for this, I should have thought about this stuff because it gets a little wordy, and I have to like remember, and I don't really remember.
You don't have to be like super specific, even just throwing out some names. You ended up going to the show, and then like, was there a moment when you were like, I need to keep doing this?
Yeah, I remember we were there, and I was like, this is something that I've never experienced before. This was. This is awesome. And then, there was definitely like bigger, like adults there. Looking back, they were probably like 19 or 22 or whatever. But, I just remember there was like people that I didn't know that were there. And then we went to another show like the next weekend or 2 weekends later or whatever it was. And then it just snowballed into like, when's the next show we're going to go to? And then And then we started going to hardcore shows. That's what I don't really remember is when that transitioned. I mean, it was probably 6 months where I was going to like those shows that my friend's band had on, and then we were going to see, Lifetime and Mouthpiece and Floor Punch. And I remember seeing those three bands, not Floor Punch as much, but Lifetime and Mouthpiece.
Yeah.
I remember seeing those bands every weekend. Anytime Mouthpiece played, or Uprise. Anytime Uprise played, like every single time Uprise played, we would go, no matter where it was.
Did you go to the? And we're jumping ahead a couple of years, but there was one of the first shows that we ever played was in this band called Congress of Cow, and we played the show in '97 at the Boot and Elks Lodge, and Uprise got on at like the last minute. This was the first time I ever saw hardcore, so we were playing the show, and it was the first time a crowd actually moshed. It was just moving around and shit, and we were like, this is so crazy. And it was like us, Humble Beginnings, and then I forget the other bands, but then Uprise got in at they were at the end, so I think they just got on the last minute. But all of these hardcore kids were there, and they started playing, and like 40 of them just started doing a fucking floor punch in like unison.
Yeah,
and it was the coolest shit I'd ever seen.
I don't remember that show exactly, but I do remember shows at the Boonton Knights Columbus Hall because I lived in Boonton in 1997. And that I walked to those shows, and there weren't a ton of them. So I'm like 95% sure that I was at that show.
It was fucking crazy. Did you get into the whole vegetarian and no, like the straight edge movement too?
So I never drank, or I never did drugs or anything like that in high school. And then in like 90. So I would say in like 93 and 94. Oh, that now it's kind of coming back. Like 93 and 94, all my friends used to skateboard around, and I used to I never skated, but I always like sat on the curb with all the girlfriends and everything like that, and was hanging out. Which in 2019, I feel weird saying that because and I have a daughter, and it's like I used to say that and be cool. Anyway, whatever. Let me.
I think it's okay to be like 16, 17 years old and want to hang out with girls. I think nowadays it's getting a bit stupid where it's like a guy talks about a girl like he thinks she's hot and they're like, you can't fucking say. It's like, fuck you. Relax. Yeah, that's just, I'm speaking for myself, but go on.
I heavily digress.
So you're hanging out with girlfriends while you're hitting on the girlfriends while your buddies are skateboarding.
No, but then fast forward, I don't know why I even brought that up. Why did I just bring that up?
Well, I'd asked what were you into the straight edge?
That's what. Thank you. Yeah. So I never X'd up, but I definitely I didn't drink and I didn't do drugs. I didn't have my first sip of alcohol till I was 22, and I didn't smoke weed until I was 24. And so they were all straight edge kids, and the whole Morris County youth crew, everybody would X up all the time. But I thought it was a little weird to X up, so I just never did. But
was it intense? Did you feel like it was a kind of an intense crowd that they were so into? Because I remember Ziobro was really into the whole straight edge thing, and it was almost intimidating from an outside perspective. I was like, what would that be like from you were a part of the crew and you're around that? It's like you guys just talk about not fucking drinking all the time, or was it like not even a topic?
No, because this is a very, very, very small. There was the Morris County Youth Crew, and then me and Aaron Kraft and this kid Matt Lieber and Rob's brother Brian, who I'm also one of my best friends. The Morris County Youth Crew called us the Morris County Adult Crew because we were like a year older. And I mean, if Matt Molnar ever listens to this, or if Dave Ackerman or Brian Malloy, these guys would all remember the Morris County Adult Crew. Paul Hanley would definitely remember that also.
This is amazing.
Yeah, the Morris County Adult Crew. So I was kind of I was never a full-on member of the Morris County Youth Crew, but I kind of teetered between the two because those guys didn't listen to, Brian and Crafty and Lieber. They would listen to the Get Up Kids and Saves the Day and in Lifetime too, and a ton of other bands.
Did you find because of that it would transfer? It kind of transferred you over to like when you got your eyes opened up to that, like the emo and pop punk thing, did you gravitate towards that or open up to it, or you were like, no, I'm just hardcore?
Oh no, I was very open to it. I would say I was more into that than hardcore. Ink and Dagger were a huge band that we listened
Oh
to.
yeah, that's right.
There was a band from Philadelphia called Frail. I have a Frail tattoo. So they were like a screamy emo band. So it was just like all over the map. It wasn't just like straight edge hardcore. It was like emo, like Mineral and Jimmy World and Promising, and it was like screamo, like I Hate Myself and Frail and Native Nod and I mean, you know, I could just list bands on and on and on. But
Yeah,
I also listened to Operation. I didn't say no to much, you know.
Did you find you were kind of snobbish about it? Like I remember when I learned about this whole thing, when I go back to high school, I'm like, oh, you guys are listening to that shit. You know, like, oh, I don't listen to radio anymore. Like now I don't give a shit. Like I was listening to John Mayer today. I was like, I don't care. I think I like the guy. But like,
I don't think I was snobbish about it, but I was just more like, I remember my brother would come home from my brother went to Penn State, and he would come home from Penn State. We're 6 years age difference, and he'd be like, "What are these bands? Like, what are you into? What are these bands that you're listening to?" And I was like, "It's hardcore." And he's like, "What do you? I don't understand. What do you mean hardcore?" And I was like, "It's hardcore, and there's also emo core." I remember I used to say he was like, know what you're talking about, and I felt kind of a little bit of pride that I knew about these bands that other people in my school and the mass, you know, people just didn't know about. And I felt a little, you know, I was like, cool.
what was like, what era of Lifetime were you seeing them? You saw Lifetime a lot. I got into Lifetime. I didn't like Hello Bastards when I got it when I was 17. Then I got Jersey's Best Dancers, and I loved that album, and that's when they broke up. Like, which albums were out? Because before they did like 7 Inches, and then there was another record that they were playing.
They had a 7 inch called Background, I think. I listened to Hello Bastards and I listened to Jersey's Best Dancers.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't even know which one is which. Those two albums are interchangeable for me. And I don't know any of the lyrics because of Ari's, like, you know, his vocals are like, bah, 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 you know, at the show. I don't really know, but anyway, yeah, those Hello Bastards, I think I liked a little bit. I don't know. I mean, I don't know which songs are on which albums. I know if you played either one of them, I could hum along to any of it.
Yeah. You'd have to hum along. I think, well, I mean, you were seeing them too at the time where no one really they didn't have much of a following then.
I know. I remember the thing when Saves the Day, everybody was giving Saves the Day grief because they thought they were a Lifetime ripoff band.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I thought Can't Slow Down kind of was very. I mean, for that time, and there was a lot of music that we hadn't listened to yet that I think our ears were kind of just in this small bubble where Chris. I mean, I think he even said he was trying to rip off Ari's voice.
Yeah. I mean, they were in that whole scene, you know. And I remember I saw on my Snapcase too was a big band that I mentioned that I left out. On my 19th birthday, I saw Refused and Snapcase at a VFW hall or something. I don't remember where, but it was on my 19th birthday, which was pretty cool. And then I never saw Refused on one of these reunion tours, but I don't know.
They were great.
I loved that drive-in also.
Yeah. Wait, did you see Refused when Shape of Punk to Come came out, or was it before that album came out?
Actually, I probably have it right here. Hold on, I have my records right here. Let me.
It was the last one they put out one recently, which I don't think any newer band should do that. Yeah, it's the one where it was like really technical because they went from like super hardcore and they made The Shape of Punk to Come, and that's when they broke up. So they toured in. Their last show was in New Brunswick in a basement, and the Cops broke it up, and that was it before they got back together in 2012 or 11.
7 Handy Street.
I don't remember exactly. It might have been it.
Yeah. It wasn't The Shape of Punk to Come. It was a record before that.
It was the one with like Rather Be Dead on it.
Yeah, Rather Be Dead. Then You're Design or whatever it was.
Yeah, it's so good. Actually, I'll just open up Spotify. Well, there's songs to fan the flames of discontent.
Flames of Discontent. That's the one.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep.
So that's the record that I saw them on.
Wow, that's when they were like full on hardcore when they were wearing like the all black.
Yeah, and they would go crazy around the stage, and that was an awesome show.
God, that's crazy.
I also, you know what? I also like. I also really like Less Than Jake and stuff like that, Skank and Pickle, and so I was all over the map. I'm not really doing a good timeline though. I'm just talking about bands that I.
That's fine.
Um,
This is all about reminiscing about that time. Just mentioning these bands, everyone's like, because a lot of people listening to this are usually driving to work, so they're like sitting in traffic right now on a Friday, having someone talk about Snapcase or Lifetime or Saves the Day, and it's like people are like, "Fuck yeah," and they're just like remembering that whole time period. So it's
yeah,
like it totally
definitely.
works.
It's funny. No, you're totally right, and I'm not talking. I'm not like doing this as a podcast. I feel like I'm just talking to a buddy of mine on the phone.
Yeah.
I don't know if it comes across that way or what, but I mean that's just what's happening right now. But if you're listening to this, it's probably it is what it is. Whatever.
Yeah, it's what everyone. That's what everyone says. They're like at the end. They're always like, "Wait, I forgot there was people listening to this." You're like, "Yeah." I mean, I like getting to, like I said, I just happen to record this, but I really love remembering that time because there's always like there's you could say it's like, oh, I've been to like a Saves the Day show, but then someone will say, yeah, but there was the one show here where this happened, and you're like, oh my God, I forgot about that, and it like triggers another memory of something else around that same time.
The Wayne Firehouse show with Saves the Day that I remember that was awesome.
Did you go to the one where they were in the back room, not on the stage? It was they were on the floor. They weren't on the stage. Do you remember
that? It doesn't ring a bell.
Okay, because that was the show we played with them, and it was right before Can't Slow Down came out. And I forget my band, like I think we played after them or something, which I think was stupid. But yeah, it was the back room of Wayne Firehouse before they opened up to the bigger room because the shows were getting too big, and it was like kind of dark because all the light was just on top of the band, and everywhere else they would turn the lights off.
Yeah.
Super small room.
Anyhow, so yeah. Good. And then one more genre, and then talk about, if you want, I'll talk about touring, which is a whole different world. But I also was really, really into female-fronted bands like Discount and Ashes and Copper, and even like La Tigra and stuff like that. And then there was one from Florida too, but I don't remember their name. But I mean, Ashes and Discount and what's the girl? Sarge from Chicago. Mm-hmm. So I'm really into that kind of stuff as well.
That's helpful because I've been actually trying to find female-fronted bands to reach out to.
Oh, well, you definitely should. Do you know Allie from Fast Times? She was she was like this. She was in a band called Fast Times. Her name's Allie. I don't know much, and I don't know anything about her besides that.
Okay.
But Fast Times were from New Jersey and around during that time, and she was like it was a female-fronted hardcore band.
Oh.
They were Alley Times. And there was a kid named Frump in the band.
Okay.
Whatever. Or somebody who's listening to this will know, and maybe they can reach out to you. But
yeah, please do if you do. This reminded me too. Do you remember the band Pillow?
No.
You ever hear them? Okay, that was like another female band from Jersey. They were like more emo, I think.
But this is also like, again, I think you were more on the punk side, and I was more on the hardcore side. So anybody who I'd reference. And I could be wrong, but like how you had Malloy on, what's his name? Matt Molnar. If you had like Matt Molnar on, or Paul Hanley. Paul Hanley is like the encyclopedia of that time.
Okay.
Do you know Paul Hanley?
I don't think so. I might.
Okay.
It might be a screen name on like Instagram or some shit.
Yeah. I mean, I'll send you his contacts or whatever. He's like a marathon runner now, and he's a nice guy. He's got long hair.
Yeah, I see him on your Facebook account.
Oh, you do? Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah, Paul he was at like every single show and knows. He's like an encyclopedia of that time.
So like so you're going to shows. Did you want to like be in a band? Was there any aspiration to try to do that?
No idea. Never wanted to be in a band. Had no idea about any of that. I am in a band now, which I have to plug. I have to tell you about.
Yeah,
I can't believe that far without well, I'll get to that in a second. So no idea about being in a band. I just went to shows and didn't even think about what it took to put them on or any of that. I was just a kid going to shows, and the closest I came was helping my friends make a zine. But that was it. And then I was working at the Fox News Channel. I worked there from 96 to 99. My dad worked in television. He got me a job there. Okay. And then in 99, I quit. And I did a semester course excuse me, I did a semester course at Outward Bound. I don't know if you know what Outward Bound is, but it's like outdoor.
I've heard of it.
So I spent a month in Newry, Maine, going like dog sledding and ice climbing and cross country skiing and doing all these outdoor wintry things, and then a month and a half off the coast of Key West, Florida, on a sailboat. So it was like 3 months, a month and a half in Maine and a month and a half in Florida, and it was awesome. Then I got done with that, and I moved to 99. Then I moved to Boston. I had some friends that lived in Boston and just kind of hung out, and that's where I met the Piebald guys. So that's how it all connects.
So you're going to shows, you didn't care about, being in a band. You just like, it was like just a part of your life, whereas in consuming, where some people were like, we want to go in this different direction, where some people were sound guys and they made a career out of it. Some people were in bands and want to make a career out of it, so they went in that direction. So you just kind of kept that in your pocket where you do these things. But then you move to Massachusetts and then you meet Piebald.
Just going to shows. I traveled across the country a couple times. I went across the country in 97 and then twice in 99. And then I moved to Boston, just kind of hanging out on my friend's couch. They lived in like this punk house on Westland Ave. And I lived on their couch, and I was just like, I had some weird jobs doing, I worked at the Museum of Fine Arts. I worked at Bennigan's. I worked at Legal Seafoods. And then I met the Piebald guys because they were just in that whole like big wheel recreation with Rama Mayo, and there was a bunch of people were hanging, the Damn Personals and the Explosion, and all those bands that were just kind of hanging out together. Oh yeah, and they were just all around. People were hanging out, and then so I knew them that way. But my first tour. My first show was at the Hat Shell in Boston selling merch for Piebald because I wanted to tour, and Rama, who was the owner of Big Wheel, said, hey, to the Piebald guys, because they were on Big Wheel, and they said, hey, you should take this kid John Cheese out. You need a merch guy. And then I think I did like 1 or 2 shows with them, and then I did the Warped Tour in 2002. Buddy Brian was like, hey, he was working as a label manager at Doghouse, and said, we need somebody for the 2002 Vans Warped Tour as a label rep. Can you come out? And I said, no, I have a job. I can't. Like, I thought that I was like done with being youthful, and I thought that was it. And I was just going to become a career person. That was it. He asked me to go on tour. I said, sure. I took a leave of absence. I did the 2002 Vans Warped Tour. I went back to work, and I said, fuck work. I don't ever want to work again. And I didn't for, close to 11 years.
All right. So you do Vans Warped Tour, and what did you do there again?
I was a label rep for Doghouse Records. So, all these different labels had people out on the entire tour selling CDs, selling T-shirts, selling their band's stuff. And I was selling Doghouse Records, rosters. It was like, stuff.
Who was on Doghouse at that time?
At that time.
I have a loaded question, but...
K. Scott, I don't know why this is the first name that comes up, but K. Scott Richter, Hot Water Music, Say Anything, hang on. Chamberlain, Favez, River City High, Split Lip, who I actually became really good friends with Curtis Mead, who's in Chamberlain and Split Lip, and they just did a European tour, which is neither here nor there. I don't know why I just name dropped Curtis, but it's okay. Fine.
Well, Megan Dia were on there.
That was way later.
Yeah, I forget.
Managed Meg. I was Megan Dia's first manager.
That's crazy.
I connected them to Mike Kaminsky, who was there. Mike Kaminsky used to be my old roommate. Anyways, let me go back.
I was gonna say though, like, fucking Roses was one of my favorite songs ever.
I need to tell you the Megan Dia story. I also have to tell you the My Chemical Romance story. I don't know how much time we have, but
we talk about however we want.
So that was who was on Doghouse at the time. So that was June, July, August, and then I got back to work, and I was like, yeah, that's it. And then Piebald went out in probably September or October of 2002, with minus, I don't remember who the first tour was, but it was like Minus the Bear and Ted Leo were on one. So some of those first tours, there's a band called The Crush. And then also My Chemical Romance opened up for Piebald on a tour because they were all booked by Matt Galley, and Matt Galley booked Piebald and this new band called My Chemical Romance. I got along with those guys, and after the tour, we kept in touch. And then their merch guy, this guy Sean, who was like a hairdresser guy, he was like, I can't tour, I can't do that. And so they called me and they're like, hey, we want to take you on the road with us. Do you want to come on? We're doing some tours. And I said, sure, this is awesome. So September, October 2002, I was with Piebald. Piebald. One of those tours was the Cave-In Piebald Damn Personals tour. And then I did the 2003 Warped Tour. And then My Chemical Romance picked me up in the parking lot at the Warped Tour in 2003 to drive to the next tour, to start the next tour.
Jesus Christ. Which album were they on at that point? Was that Three Cheers?
No, they didn't.
The Vampire one or whatever?
Yeah, you gave me My Bullets and I gave you My Valentine or whatever. I don't even know what it's called.
Okay.
But that first tour I did was Give Up the Ghost, Every Time I Die, Senses Fail, My Chemical Romance tour.
Wasn't Give Up the Ghost? Didn't they have a different name and to legally change it to that?
American Nightmare.
That was it. Okay.
So that was the first tour I did.
That was before Piebald?
No. The first tour I did with My Chem.
Oh, okay.
And the second tour I did with My Chemical Romance was Midtown, Reggie and the Full Effect.
Jesus.
Monine. I think Monine did half and Senses Fail did half.
Okay.
I remember the Monine guys were awesome. But I got fired on that tour because I thought I was more punk. Then looking back in retrospect, I was an idiot who just should have kept my mouth shut. But I got fired on that tour because I questioned the sincerity and why they were making the music they were making.
My Chem?
Yeah, we were in the van traveling, going to a show. We were going to a sold-out show towards the end of the tour in Chicago at the House of Blues. And everybody was listening to their headphones or kind of like sleeping or just kind of doing their own thing. Everybody was being quiet. I was reading Punk Planet, We Are the Interviews. There's a book called We Are the Interviews. And I was reading the interview with Ted Leo, and I was getting really into it and just really stoked on the ethics of punk and the reasoning people get into bands and do all this stuff. And mind you, I had no idea. I was never in a band. I didn't know what it takes and why people get into bands or whatever. But I was reading this book and I was getting super into it. And I just popped up and I was like, guys, Ted Leo is right. And they were like, what? We were just in the van. It was just the dudes in the band, a tour manager, and me as the merch guy. And I was like, Ted Leo's right. And everybody's taking off their headphones and kind of, putting their books down, waking up. And I was like, there's no sincerity in punk music anymore. These bands, why are bands anymore? And why do bands become bands? You guys sing about bats and vampires. What do you care about that? And I went on to this 5-minute rant in the van driving to a show. And I could see Gerard and Ray, they were glancing at each other and staring, passing looks, being like, what the fuck? What is Cheese doing? And they were then we pulled over to a rest stop and Gerard was like, hey, let's go for a walk. And I was like, all right. And so we're walking, down the road and he's like, we got to send you home. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you can't question our sincerity and still tour with us. You don't know what it takes and you don't know how important this is to all of us.
Wow.
And so we went to the show and they're like, don't set up merch. Don't do anything. You're going home. And I was like, all right, whatever. So we get to the venue. I go to the balcony and they go on, they're playing that night and and Gerard is holding, he's in between songs. Maybe it was the beginning of their set and he's talking to the audience, but he's looking up at me and he says, if you know what you're doing, if you believe in what you're doing, don't let anybody, and he's staring up at me at the balcony. He's like, don't let anybody question your sincerity. Don't let anybody question what you do. If you believe in what you're doing, do it. And everybody's like, yay. And I was like, oh shit.
Oh man.
And I took a Greyhound home that night back to New York.
Wow. That's crazy, dude.
And I didn't really speak to them again. So that was 2003. That was probably the fall of 2003. I didn't speak to them again until probably Warped Tour in 2005, 4 or 5. Whenever they were on Warped Tour, I was like, I saw him. I was like, hey, and Frank was like, I'll never forget what you said about us. And Gerard was cordial, and Ray was cordial, and Mikey was just like whatever. And they had a different drummer, but because I toured with Otto, I forget the guy's first name, but he was our first drummer. But I never really kept in touch with him after that, and that was my Chemical Romance story.
Wait, was this the time where Gerard was like in pretty rough shape?
He had like just started drinking.
Oh, okay, because he went down like a dark path for like a minute, and then he got out of it.
That was like because the tours I did were like they're like second and third tours that they ever did. There's a YouTube video where I videotaped them on that tour. If you like look up My Chemical Romance 2003, it should be like the first video.
Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, it's like starts off with like the back of a drummer.
I don't know. It's like an 8 or 9 minute video.
Yeah, it's like on the tour bus. It's like them behind the scenes and shit, walking out into a stage. Wow. Yep, John Cheese is rad. Okay, so let me just rewind back for a little bit. We kind of jumped ahead.
Yeah,
we
sure.
can skip around. Tell me about like the whole thing with Piebald, because which album were they on at that point? Was that the one with the 5 songs with like the You're Part of It EP, or was this when if it were Venetian Blinds? This
was
or that green one they did with like a bike.
They just started We Are the Only Friends We Have.
Okay, all right. So they were getting some bigger-ish, not huge, but
so that Hatch Shell show that I did, the Hatch Shell is just this. If you're from Boston, you know what the Hatch Shell is? It's like a kind of like an amphitheater kind of thing. It's just this. It's a amphitheater-esque thing in Boston that people play, and they did a promo for MTV2 where they were like, each guy in the band was like, we are Piebald, you are listening to MTV2, and they were going to explode. They were like on the verge of exploding. And then I don't really know what the details were, but something happened with Rama and them, because Rama was their label and he was also their manager, and I never really knew what happened, but there was some beef that went down that I don't even know what happened, but he owned the rights to the songs or something. I really don't know. So they never really exploded or whatever, but they were pretty big for
yeah, they were always like kind of teetering,
but they're some of the best dudes, and they are, I don't know, they're awesome. So
I loved Piebald. I was a huge Piebald fan back then.
It was weird because I was a Piebald fan before I knew them. I was a Piebald fan in like 96, 97. I remember going to shows. Because we also went to Fest, and I would travel the Tin Can Full of Dreams Fest in Massachusetts. There was a New Jersey Fest in 98 where they did a cover, and I don't remember which cover they did, but some kid got hurt in the audience. But anyway, I would go see them anytime they played. I was a fan of their band, and then to get to tour with them, and not just tour them, but become friends with the guys, was pretty trippy. I never really felt, even though it was like I toured them for a long, long time, I never felt like I was on the inside circle with those guys, which is crazy because like they had a documentary. I think they had a documentary too, which I'm in a handful of times, and I think I was their first merch guy, and then Ryan McGaffigan was their tour manager, and we kind of started at the same time.
The thing is though, like I think just those guys seemed like were you a Weston fan?
Yeah, totally.
So it's like Dave and Chuck almost had their own language. They were just they would make each other laugh on this different level, and to get in with them, I think it was not difficult, but the two of them were just more comfortable with each other. I think when I saw Piebald from the outside, I saw these 4 guys. Well, it was really just like the front guys. I never got to see the drummer too much because he was just playing drums. It looked like the 3 of them were in on this private joke, which and then like they would probably say one word to each other and just make each other laugh, and you were on the outside like, what the fuck are you talking about? And they're like, God, don't worry about it.
They were all best friends in high school, and they knew each other forever. I mean, they started their band in high school. So I think it was just one of those things where they just, they have just this bond, which I guess any band does. But I guess if you've been in a band for so long that, and they all had their own personalities. Like Aaron Stewart was insane. Like he was crazy, and I mean they were just all.
What explain that though? Like, what were they like on tour?
Um, I don't know.
You can't just leave it up in the air like that. I mean, you don't have to tell anything crazy, but just like I remember there was a story where we played a show, it was Mac Rock in Virginia, I think, in like 98 or 99, and they were on like it was all over the town. And I guess like they had played their show, but later on that night, one of them got like naked and was on the roof of a house yelling or some shit like that, and the cops came.
I don't know the story, but I'm sure that was Aaron Stewart.
Okay.
Yeah, he was just a wild one. We played a game called Vodka Football where he would. That was in LA though. That was a little bit after. But anyway, that was part of that time where we would just toss a vodka bottle around, and if you got the bottle, you had to drink it. Not the entire thing, but just
take a swig. Football.
Yeah.
Did you see them? You put in your email. You went to New Bedford Fest. We used to play that a lot. Like Russ, we used to put that on.
Yeah. What's the band from Chokehold? What's the band from Canada? There's a hardcore band from Canada. Not Resurrection. Chokehold. Where we like toilet paper on their hotel room door. It's just like a prank, as a kid prank, because we were like, oh my god, it's Chokehold, and we didn't know what to do, and we like thought they were like the coolest band, and we threw toilet paper on their door and like watched them answer the door, and they were like, what, you know. I have videos of that also where we saw Texas the Reason play, and Inkwell. I love the band. There was a band from down south called Inkwell, Atlanta, I want to say, or Little Rock or Atlanta. But yeah, those New Bedford fests were awesome.
Yeah, they were. Was that the?
That's the one. Sorry to interrupt. Lifetime played New Bedford Fest, and the kid jumped off the balcony, and I have that on videotape. When he didn't break the kid's neck, but he had the whole show had to come to an end or a pause, and the ambulance came, and I happened to be filming Lifetime set, and I have that whole thing on video, which I don't think I ever put onto the internet, but I haven't.
Oh my god, so you got to digitize this shit.
I have so many videos of like all these old shows that I've never done anything with. I don't know how to do it. You know how to do it? You want to help me with it?
So I have a bunch of video like VHS tapes from my old bands playing shows back then, and it's such a fucking process. You have to get a VCR, and you have to plug it directly into your computer, and then play it, and then do like a screen.
Yeah, I don't.
It's so fucking confusing, but like Joe Polito, I talked about before, like he's doing this lately. I'm like, how do you? He used to talk to me. I was like, God damn it, why can't they make this so much fucking easier? Because there's like that. There's so many gems right there. That you have all this video footage for, and it's just sitting somewhere where if you put online, it's like people can easily access it. But it's like such a fucking pain in the dick to do it.
Exactly. And my life now, it's like I don't have time to do. I've got 2 kids. I got a job. I got a wife. I don't have time to do any of this stuff.
Tell me about the actually. Dude, I just gotta say, tell me the Megan Dia story, because I got into them when they put out their Monster, whatever that CD was with Monster and Roses, and I was like, first of all, I was like, God damn, these girls are fucking hot as hell. And I actually did, I forgot, I actually did a couple design jobs for Doghouse in like 2004. Yeah, there's
Matt Rubin, or it was either Matt Rubin or Sheffield. Brian Sheffield. You had to. I mean, it wasn't for Dirk. Probably.
I think it was Sheffield, because so there's the Say Anything alt press cover in like 2004 or 2000.
I mean, I lived at the Doghouse Records offices in 2004, 2005, 2006.
Okay, yeah.
It like 100% like. Yeah.
Do you remember the Max Bemis cover of Alternative Press magazine? But then like the second page, there was an ad for Doghouse with Megan Dia, and then like 4 other bands. I actually have a picture of it.
I'm sure it's like Say Anything, Honorary Title, Limbeck, Megan Dia.
Yeah.
Feeble Wiener.
Feeble Wiener.
Yeah. They're from Tennessee.
Really I forgot that Doghouse put out Woodson, which is the Get Up Kids EP.
That's what those lyrics are about. God, it's killing me. Anything. There's a song about Doghouse Records that doesn't mention Doghouse, but I was told it's about Doghouse from the Get Up Kids on one of those records.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. I won't do anything.
Oh, yeah. I know exactly. If I gave everything.
I know there is a song that talks about the relationship with them and Dirk, but...
Well, real quick though, so the thing I designed, it's the free digital sampler from Doghouse Records. I have the picture right here. It's got Jetlag Gemini on the second page, Megan Dia on the one side, and then they've got like, and you don't probably remember this, but yeah, I designed the whole spread. It was like one of the most exciting things I ever did. I think they paid me like $200-$300 for it or something, and that's, I think after doing that and then doing a couple like landing pages for them, I realized that there literally was no music. There was no money in doing any design work for record labels, and I got the fuck out of that super fast.
Sure, at that size, right? If it's like Electra or something crazy, maybe. But
oh yeah, they always wanted to get something for super cheap. I'm like, this takes a long fucking time. I was like, fuck you guys. Well, no, not like that. Like fuck you, but I was like, fuck this industry. There was no way. What's the Megan Dia story? You said you wanted me to remind you.
My Chemical Romance fired me, and then I worked for a band called Apollo Sunshine, who I also knew from Boston, who were amazing. They just put out a record called Katona. This was in 90. It was in 93. I did a handful of tours with them. We did a Hot Hot Heat tour. We did some band called Fish Lake or Lake Trout. Stopped touring with them, and it was late 2003, like very late, and I didn't know what to do next. And Brian Sheffield once again was like, "Hey, you should tour manage this band Limbeck." And I was like, okay, I don't know anything about them. I listened to their record. They had a new record out called Hi, Everything's Great. And I was like, this is awesome. So I emailed their guitar player and I tour managed for the first time. And that my first tour with them was in January of 2004. And they became so close. The guys in the band became so close to me that like we were in each other's wedding parties, not just we didn't just their weddings. We're like in each other's wedding parties, and like some of my best friends in the entire world. So Limbeck on one tour sometime played in St. George, Utah, and we played the Electric Theater in St. George, Utah, and this band called Coward's Courage was opening, and I didn't think anything of it because, you know, it was just local openers. I didn't think anything of it, but these two girls were on stage and they were singing, and I was just like, it's like, oh my God, these girls are incredible. And they were like young. They were probably 15 or 16 or I don't know how old they were, but they were definitely like, you know, they were young.
Okay. I might have to take back my hot comment.
Well, no, but this is 2004. And they were a band called Coward's Courage, and they were playing. I was like, "Oh my God, you're great!" There, and so they went back to the merch table, and I was back at the merch table after the show. You know, when the kids are filing out, and I was like on the table. I would go crazy at the merch, trying to like generate sales. So I would like stand on the merch table and tell kids, you know, "Hey, the band you just saw Limbeck, they're playing $10. Here's a CD, blah blah blah." And I would like really get out there and try to sell stuff. Borderline obnoxious. Some people were like, this guy sucks. But anyway, I, after the show, talked to those girls and I was like, hey, like, I'm a tour manager. I'm not a manager. I don't know how to manage a band, but I think I can help you guys somehow. And I really, really think that you need to be on you need to play like nationally, and like, here's my contact info. I had like a business card and I gave it to him, and I'm going to do something for you guys because you guys are so awesome and you've got a great look and you're like, you sound so good. And then, so I got their contact info. I took press photo, or Rob, the singer of Limbeck, took press photos of them. I introduced them to my friend Brian from Doghouse. I had a bunch of the Militia Group and Doghouse and Fiddler Records from Amy from Fiddler. And I like shopped their demo around, and I was like, okay, like I'm a manager now. Poof, I'm a manager. And I thought, I was like, maybe this is how the music industry works. I started out as a merch guy and I became a tour manager. Now I'll be a manager. So I managed Megan Dia for a while. I got them a little bit of press, and I don't know. I think I got him on a show with The Format or something. And like, I did some stuff. and I was doing stuff, but I didn't really know what to do. But my roommate at the time was this guy, Mike Kaminsky. Mike Kaminsky was working for Jillian, Taking Back Sunday's manager, Jillian Newman. Jillian.
No idea who she would be.
Mike Kaminsky used to be her assistant, and we were roommates. And I was like, listen, man, I'm not a manager. You're a manager. I'm just a tour manager. I don't know what to do with these girls, but I know that you could take them to the next level. And like, you really need to like take them. Let's like co-manage them. So we co-managed them for like a minute, but I didn't do anything. And Mike did everything. And then he still manages them to this day. And Mike Kaminsky manages like 303 and I think that band Neck Deep. I don't even know, but he's like a proper manager of bands, and he's been their manager ever since. That's my Megan Diaz story.
What are the things you had to do when you were on tour with these guys? Like when you were doing the merch and shit like that, was it just you'd show up, you'd drag everything in, sit at the fucking table for 7 hours, and then get back in a van and take off?
So as a tour manager or as a merch guy, it depends on which band or for who. I mean, when I was with Limbeck, because I was at Limbeck for more than any other band, I would advance the shows. I would, if they had any press, I would make sure that there was interviews happening. I would do the guest list to make sure that was right. I would send in stage plots. I would settle at the end of the night. I would sell merch. I would make sure at the end of the night, I would make sure that all the guys. We had a couple of rules. If you leave the band, get back to the van. If you leave if you leave the group, find your way back. If you leave the pack, find your way back. That's what it was. But I had to make sure that the guys weren't too wasted. And I mean, I also definitely had my fair share of nights that I don't remember, but we did, and then we were open up for bands. We did the All American Rejects tours, Newfound Glory, and we did a Lucero tour. And guys used to like to party and just drink. We never did anything else besides drink.
So you did all this though. You did this from 2004 to 2012. Like you lived on the road with all these bands.
2002 was my first tour on the Vans Warped Tour. 2002, and then I did Piebald 2002. I did Apollo Sunshine 2003. I did My Chemical Romance 2003. Limbeck 2004. And then I started with Megan Diaz. I did my the Honorary Title. I did a bunch of tours with. We did a Switchfoot tour, which was really fun. Yeah, and then and then I met my wife in 2009, and I was still touring. I met her in December of 2009. Jesse from Motion City Soundtrack introduced my wife and I.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he lives about a 5-minute drive away from me right now. No, less than that. 2-minute drive away from me right now.
He lives in Jersey?
Yeah, Maplewood, New Jersey, with his wife and daughter.
Get the fuck out. Are they from Jersey?
No, Minneapolis.
Oh, wow. He just fell in love in New Jersey?
No, my wife and his wife are best friends from high school.
Oh, okay.
So that's how we met. He had a party. He had a holiday party where he invited me to. I ran into him at an airport. I was going to a Streetlight Manifesto show. He was going to a Motion City show in Pittsburgh, and we were at the airport, and I was like, hey, and I knew him from touring, and we ran into each other. We sat next to each other on the plane, and he was like, hey, when you get back, you should, call me. We'll hang out. And I was like, yeah, all right. I thought he was just being friendly or whatever, but then I got back, after the tour, after the shows, I went back to Brooklyn or wherever it was. And I called him and he was like, yeah, come out. We're having this, we're going to this comedy thing at Upright Citizens Brigade. You should come. And my wife was there, and that was the first night I met her. And then they had a holiday party. Jesse, you don't really need the story, but I'm in it. Jesse had a holiday party that he and his wife threw every year. And my wife was there because she was best friends with his wife. And I went because I was friends with Jesse, and we made out on a roof, and now we're married and have 2 kids and live in Jersey.
So did that kind of transition you, like, by being married during that time? So you guys met 2009. You stayed on. When did you officially start dating?
My last tour was 2012. So I toured for a couple of years after that.
Okay, yeah. So is that one of the reasons why you stopped in 2012?
I could have either stayed on the road. Well, yes. if I didn't meet my wife, I would not have. Who knows what my life would have been like if I didn't meet my wife? But thank God I did. She's awesome. Obviously, she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Besides, her and my kids.
But like, just I mean, there's always a point where anyone I'm talking to, there's like, it's kind of like what kind of caps off the interview. It's like you're in it, and then all of a sudden it stops. So like, were you kind of bummed when it stopped? Like, even though you were like super stoked on being with your wife and having kids, like, were you kind of like, oh man?
Well, you know what happened is Limbeck stopped touring. And when they stopped touring, it was like, what am I going to do? And then I toured with big. And then I was just like going from tour to tour, but I didn't have a band. And I didn't know if I was going to. I tried to get to that next, like, next level. Like, Brian Diaz is this tour. He's like toured with Fall Out Boy forever and Motion City. But he's also done like Guns N' Roses. And like, he's like a crazy Anthrax. And he's like a crazy. And I always thought that's, I was going to be like that and be like a
Road dog.
Or a total road dog, just get tattoos and just be a road dog. But then, and I toured with Streetlight Manifesto, who kind of became my new Limbeck band. They were great. And I did Big D and the Kids Table, who were also awesome. I love those guys. And then I did a weird national tour where I was a driver. I drove their sound gear. So I didn't tour manage them. I wasn't their merch guy. I was a driver. And then I did a T-Pain tour, which was so weird. But I stopped touring because it was just Warped Tour came to an end for me in 2012. That year I was just like not feeling it. It just wasn't what I wanted to do. And I just felt a change. And I got off that tour. And then my wife I waited tables for a little bit in the city. And then my wife was like, I had a buddy, the Format's old tour manager was like, his name is Mike Jarmuz. He was like, you should get into real estate because it's awesome and it's perfect for people like us. And I was like, all right, sure. Like, I don't know. And then I was waiting tables and I stopped waiting tables. My wife was like, why don't you try that real estate thing? Just sign up and go to school and see what happens. So I did. And then I've been a real estate agent for 7 years.
Do you ever meet people like who you're selling a house to? And we're going to wrap this up soon, but do you ever meet people who like you were selling a house to and you guys end up finding out that you were in the scene together?
I sold Fat Mike from NoFX's restaurant in Brooklyn.
What? Wait, I didn't know he had a restaurant.
He was just like a silent partner. But one of the guys in Streetlight Manifesto is him and his wife are thinking about buying a house in New Jersey, and I'm helping them with that. And like, my touring days and being John Cheese has helped my real estate for sure.
Well, just because like the networking and things like that, or because you like it, almost because you lived on the road, so they can connect with you in that sense.
I think it's because of it's just your circle of influence, which is such a lame term, but it's just like,
yeah,
it's just the people that you know in your sphere of influence. It's just like people you know and people who are in your Rolodex. And I didn't even talk about my goddamn band. I know you want to wrap this up, but I have to talk about my band. I'm in a band called Rights of Springfield. We're a bunch of punk dads that live in Maplewood, New Jersey, and we have 3 shows coming up. You can look at us on our Instagram page, just Rights, RITES of Springfield. It's just like Rights of Spring, but Springfield, because we all live south of Springfield in Maplewood. And we're just like this punk dad band who sing about flooded basements and train delays on New Jersey Transit. And it's a lot of fun, but I can't believe I didn't plug my band more than I did.
Well, you were going to like 5 minutes in, and you're like, I'll get back to that in a second. Even though like I always end every interview asking if people want to plug something, so you pretty much just did it.
Okay.
I've looked at the pictures on Instagram. It's like you're singing. You guys are in a driveway.
Yeah, Porch Fest.
And you're like on the ground.
Yep.
There's just kids around you dancing.
Yeah, it's so much fun. So we just playing shows. There's Chris Daly, who's in Texas the Reason. He was in Resurrection. He was in 108. He was in like a million bands. He a couple towns over in West Orange, and he's in a band called High Disciple. And we're probably gonna play with them soon. It's not booked, but I mean that's
freaking amazing. Yeah, dude. Did you go to the Texas reunion show back in like 2006?
I went to like their 3rd or 4th show at the Chatham show with Snapcase and Mouthpiece and Bloodlet and 108. But I used to go to Texas. Texas is the Reason we're a great band. Do you know Who You Are is a great record?
Yeah, actually, my favorite song on that record is that song, which is the instrumental. Which is so weird because I hate instrumentals. I hate them, but I love that one so much for some reason. It's almost like the guitar riff is almost like a vocal part. It's weird.
Yeah. No, Texas Reason, they're, one of the best bands.
Yeah, it was 2006 when they played.
Anyway, I haven't looked. Do you have any idea how long this has been going on for?
Like an hour and a half.
Oh, okay, not too bad. How long does it usually run for?
Lately they've been going to about like I usually it's like an hour, sometimes it's 2 hours, really depending on like where we go with it. So, but I just kind of just let it go.
I dig this. I feel like I could talk for about the past and.
So it's funny because like I started doing this a year ago, and we ended up playing a reunion show in Jersey, and it was almost like a punk rock like high school reunion.
Oh yeah.
Where this whole room, it was like 300 people got together at Mexicali in Teaneck, and it was just like people standing around like this, just like talking for hours about just this shit.
Yeah.
It's like if I live in North Carolina now, but if I lived in Jersey, I feel like I'd put together like once a month some things where people would just show up at a bar and just like bullshit about like the past.
Did you listen to a band called Situation at 1200?
Someone talked about them because who the fuck was in that band?
There was also a real estate agent in Maplewood, Scott Shields. Do you know Scott Shields?
Oh my God, I feel like are you part of the North Jersey pop punk group on Facebook?
No.
Oh, dude, you gotta get in there.
Okay.
It started in 2009. My buddy Jay, who was in this band called Red Rover, he started it, and people just post like pictures of tape cassettes and patches and shit like that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should join it. Who is that guy's name again? Scott who? Sheffield? Oh, Scott Shields. Yeah, he's in it. He's got a beard.
He's a real estate agent now. I can't find him, but yeah.
Yeah, he's in the group.
It's all or irrelevant, depending on how you look.
All right, man. So I am gonna wrap this up because I actually do have to get back to a project that I need to fucking.
It's totally cool. I hope this is okay. I mean, I don't know how it's supposed to go, but I hope this was.
No, this is great. Actually, it was cool because Brian Malloy, after I did his interview, he ended up finding about like he had 4 copies. He has a bunch of copies of his zine. He ended up sending them to me.
Oh, just in time for nothing. I've got those things.
Yeah, I interviewed him about that whole thing. Like, Well, actually, were you the one who was with him when he came up with the name?
Well, I know Brian Sheffield took the photos for Just in Time for Nothing.
There was someone that he tells the story about being in the car, and he got out, and he's like, "Oh, we're late." He's like, his buddy was like, "Oh, Just in Time for Nothing," and he's like, "That's the name of the zine."
Yeah, no, that wasn't me, but I knew Malloy before the zine and like during the zine, so that was like. He's a character. I haven't talked to him in years and years and years, but he was a character. He's always a nice guy. Yeah. Him and we were Chris Kelly from 97A. We were all pretty close at that time. The whole, hardcore scene. Anyway, cool, man.
Yeah. So okay, I'm gonna end this with one last question.
Okay.
Since you already plugged your dad band.
Yeah.
All right. So this is how I end every episode. What scene ethics do you still hold on to this day?
I mean, punk ethics they made me who I am, That's an embarrassing quote right there. I mean, I would just say having punk ethics and the frail tattoo that I mentioned that was on my leg, it says make your own noise. And that kind of says it all, because no matter what, you should just make your own noise. Like, do you? But what ethics?
Yeah, I think you kind of just said it though. It's like it's like DIY, I guess.
Yeah, well, just be yourself. I mean, no bullshit. Yeah, make your own noise. That's it. Just take that. That's what I want to leave it with. Make your own noise. So, however you want to make your own noise, you make your own noise.